All right, so it has been a while since I have checked in with you guys about everything that's going on with the Aero sedan. So as you can see, it is completely stripped bare. I have the frame off of the body, and I'm just waiting on a couple buddies to come over so I can get the body back on the dolly. And I did this because it's time for the finishing touches. So I already went and rebuilt all of the cross members under the car. There were 3 boxed sections that ran under the car that I had to remove for the drive shaft tunnel. And so I rebuilt those, got those all tightened up just to add some strength back into the floor pan and everything else. I got the chassis harness done and tested as much as I could. I didn't hang the front sheet metal, so I didn't have the headlights and running lights, horn, all that type of stuff to be able to wire in. So that harness is still just loose, waiting to be cut to length and terminated. And I got everything else done and tested it. Everything is working good. I also finished up the wiring for the air suspension. So both compressors and the airlift performance 3H system is all wired in now. And I did a little bit more stuff with the engine as far as the fuel system. And so what I did yesterday was I got my pallet racking all torn apart, cleaned up, and then I consolidated and organized everything, knowing that I was going to be stripping this guy bare. And so I took all my bins, took everything out, organized it, now that I know a little bit more about what everything is for, and got that organized, consolidated. So I have like my front fenders, rear fenders, dash. There's the front bench seat. Rear bench seat is up there because I'm not going to be dealing with that this year. I have all my bright parts up there, my chrome and stainless stuff, as far as like the bumper guards and the pull down and the bumperettes and the backup light, everything like that. Got the fuel tank up there. Here's a mix of front suspension, brake lines, rear suspension, brake parts, exhaust, rear bumper, everything like that. I got the rear end pulled out. So what I'm going to be doing with this stuff is anything that's raw metal is going to get painted. I'm going to use some Steel It coating, which I found to be the best. I have a whole case of Steel It in black. So all of the suspension links and the rear end, the front steering knuckles, and control arms, everything like that is going to be coated in black Steel It. The entire chassis, the entire frame is going to be coated in black Steel It, as is the underside of the body once I get all of the metalwork completely finished. And then I'll also be using that to do the whole interior. So we're obviously going to coat everything that's bare metal now, but I'm going to spend some time and clean some stuff up on the firewall and on the floor, get everything sanded down, and then I will do the whole interior in Steel It black coating as well, because for this year at least it's just going to be a bench seat and the dash, and that's it. And no rear seat, no headliner, no other interior. So I want to have everything nice and uniform painted, looking pretty good. I do have the original door panels that are in rougher shape, but I think I'll probably put those on the doors so at least there's something. And of course we'll also use the Steel It coating in the trunk here and everything else like that. So got a lot of stuff to clean up, a lot of fine tuning to do here and there. One of the things I have to do to the chassis is finish weld out the top of the C-notch here, this bridge that I made for the removable top cover. That's all just tack welded in place, so I need to finish welding that out. And then I need to do a little trimming in here and then make the plate to plate the inside of the C-notch. I also am going to go and fill in a few of the holes on the frame that I know I don't need. And I have a little bit of smoothing out I want to do of a few things. And then that'll be the frame finished. Here you can see one of the cross members that I built back in. So it's made out of 2 pieces of 1-inch square stock that I just heated up, forged, and made this bend into. And this stuff is 1/8-inch wall, which is a lot thicker than the cross member here. You can see I just capped this edge. And then if you look further down, I got another one of these right up there. And then that one there, these go below the drive shaft, and that one up there has to go above the transmission itself. But those are the 3 cross members that I got connected back together. And so now I have to do some finishing touches on the body. I cut this out to clearance the triangulated link mount down here. And so I need to clean this all up and weld that back solid. That'll be a pretty easy little patch panel. Have to do that on both sides. And then I have these 3 clearances these are for the triangulated links on each side, and then that's for the snout of the differential. So I'm just gonna have to make little boxed pieces to put in there. I'll TIG weld those in, and then I'm gonna do stuff like clean up all of the sheet metal excess that's hanging down here. And I have a few other things I want to clean up. I think I'm going to cut out, I have this cut out to match the notch there, but I think I'm going to trim it out a little bit larger. You can kind of see where the sheet metal framing is. I may trim it out along there. The other side has a little bit of rust on it. This side here is a bit cleaner, and so there's a whole bunch of little stuff on the chassis like that I need to finish first. Then we got to sand everything and steel it coated. The firewall is another big thing on the body that I have to deal with here. The previous owner, Keith, had started smoothing and shaving this all out, so this is all Bondo that I'm going to have to touch up and clean up a bit. I think there's a couple of holes that are covered up that I need to auger out that I need to use. He shaved the whole front of this here, and so this I had added back in for the throttle cable, but I'm going to add another hole next to it for the choke cable, and then I'm going to have to add another hole elsewhere for the water temp probe and the oil pressure line, so that those can get out and have access to the engine as well. And so you can see here, this is the brake 90-degree brake pedal booster setup. This is for the clutch pedal and throttle pedal and stuff. And so I'm going to need to sand those down, put some new Bondo in, fix up a few little things here and there. This isn't going to be perfect this year, because the car is going to get painted down the line. So all I want is just for all the bare metal to at least be painted. So this will get a steel it coating. I may do this in the silver, just so when the hood and fender and everything's on, there's not as much of a shadow that you can see through there, because you can see here, you know, it's a pretty rough edge. And so I'm going to have to kind of tape right along there, and so up close you'll be able to see some of the new paint on there, but I'd rather have it protected than not. And like I said, this car, maybe next winter, but probably in 2 years, will get painted and stripped all the way down to bare metal. So for this year, I just want to get it on the road. It's not cutting corners, it's just doing it in stages. So I got to clean up all the firewall. I want to clean up a little more of the transmission tunnel that I put in there. And then it's time to get crazy on the paint. Up front, I just have a few little things I want to do, like I want to kind of get this smoothed out. This is the clearance for the steering shaft here, and so I want that just to kind of be blended in and look like it was milled out of there almost. The steering rack cross member, the front suspension cross member here, I'm going to smooth out all the welds on this so that looks like a nice solid manufactured piece. And then I'm gonna cap the ends on each side so it's nice and all smoothed out and there's no cavity there for stuff to collect. I'll have to do some sanding and get some steel it coating in there as well. That deals really good with rust. And then there's some little stuff like there's a hole here and a hole here, a couple of holes here that I don't need anymore. I also don't need either of these holes or this hole, and on. And we'll see how ambitious I get with filling those holes. That's always something I can do down the line. I eventually want to have this chassis pretty smoothed out and powder coated, but we'll see how good the steel it coating looks, and if it looks really good, we'll just leave it like that, and then I can always just grind down and fill out those welds or fill out these holes with weld really easy down the line, and just another coating of steel it, and we'll be looking good. So we'll see how that steel it coating does. So yeah, that's what's on the horizon. This time of year, I am working 65, 70 hours a week, so I only have Sundays to work on this thing. So what would take me a week to do as far as all that stuff I just talked about is going to take me probably 4, 5, 6 weeks to get done to the point where the body can go back on the chassis. It might take even longer. And then once the body goes back on the chassis, then it's, final assembly time. Obviously not final because I'm doing it in stages, but for this summer, it's final assembly. So all the airlines, all the brake plumbing, fuel plumbing, everything goes back in permanently and gets tightened up. And then I get the wiring back on, the dash back in, get the front glass in, items like that. And then it's time to hang sheet metal, get the doors on, then the fenders, which are going to take some modifying because the shock towers here, or the airbag towers, are in the way, as is the shock tower here. So these two things interfere with the inner fender, which is actually a mount for the fender itself. The fender itself basically mounts right here to the body, and then right here maybe, or somewhere else on the frame, and then mounts to the actual core support for the radiator as well, and everything is kind of supported by that inner fender. So I'm gonna have to trim the inner fender to get those to fit, and then obviously it's like the splash pan and the all the other associated parts of that, the pontoons on the doors, the front bumper, grill, hood, and I wasn't the one that took any of this apart, so I don't know how it goes back together. I have an old service manual that has some good diagrams, but as far as the order of operations and stuff like that, it's all new to me, and there's going to be a lot of headaches, I'm sure, with it and learning curves, because obviously everything has all these adjustments. You have to shim it. There's going to be some wiggle room up, down, left, right, and then out and in with all the shims and everything. And with the way that these cars are, with the pontoons on the door and how it fits into the bubble fender, that fitment is really key. And then the way that these hoods open and close, it's gonna take a while. So that will probably, hanging the front sheet metal will take as long as the entire reassembly of this once it's time. But once that's done, then it's basically finishing some fuel plumbing and a few more basic things on the engine, radiator hoses, belt, little stuff like that. And then it will be time to try to get the engine running and test everything out, test all the air system out, everything like that. And hopefully, in a perfect world, I will be driving this thing end of July. Most likely it'll be August. Worst case scenario, I don't drive it this year. And at that point, it's kind of it is what it is. I'm not going to cut corners. Obviously, like I said, I'm doing it in stages, so there's some stuff that I am going to either redo or address down the line, but we're not going to hack anything together to get this thing on the street this year. If it just doesn't happen, if the engine doesn't want to run and it needs both carburetors rebuilt and all the linkages to be messed with, and if it's fussy as far as that stuff goes, then it's just going to take a little time and we'll see what happens. But that's where I'm at on the project. And once the metal work and paint and everything is done, I'll show you guys that, and then we'll get going on the reassembly. Thanks for watching.
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true!